Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambeau channel. The SEC gets a win against Ripple on a specific recent motion, but how big of a deal is this? I'll share with you my opinions as well as comments from a couple attorneys within the XRP community here. I will tell you at the outset that, in particular, based on some recent developments, I suspect that this, although technically a win, if you want to call it that, for the SEC, they got their way and Ripple didn't get the way didn't go the way Ripple wanted to go. I don't suppose that this is particularly going to matter, but I'll get into that. And also, to be clear, this was about the Slack messages. In fact, here's a headline to that effect: "Blow to Ripple as SEC gets access to company's missing Slack messages." But there's another development in which the SEC recently found out that Ripple actually recorded various meetings, company meetings, and they just found out within the last, I think, month or so, and they are demanding that Ripple hand over all of the audio and video associated with this. And I just think that's kind of rich, considering that they refused to hand over their internal communications having to do with the deliberations as far as the SEC's opinion on how they're interpreting what Bitcoin, Ether, and XRP specifically are. Are they securities? Are they commodities? Are they magical unicorns? Nobody knows. So I'm going to talk about that, and also got a comment from, by the way, from David Schwartz, who is Ripple's CTO and co-creator of the XRP Ledger, on why Ripple was recording meetings in the first place. But I want to be clear at the outset, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos purely as a hobby, but that's all that's going on here, damn it. And so let's go ahead and start over here with the with this topic of the SEC demanding video and audio from Ripple, even though they don't want to give over internal documents that the court has ordered they must turn over here. And so there is this tweet from an XRP community member and attorney James K. Filan. XRP community, SEC versus Ripple, hashtag XRP. The SEC has filed a motion to compel Ripple to produce video and audio recordings of Ripple staff meetings it claims to have learned about from, quote, a key former Ripple employee, end quote, in a deposition taken earlier this month. Now, somebody named Incognito saw that and had a legitimate question, simply wrote the following. Is that normal for company meetings to be recorded on audio or video? Most meetings I've been to are never recorded. Weird. And so this is where David Schwartz, who is Ripple's CTO, jumped in. He actually saw that and took a moment to respond. And it makes sense. And here's what he had to say on that. When you have employees around the globe, there is no time that works for everyone. You either record the meetings, force some employees to attend meetings at 3 a.m. or 9 p.m., or leave some employees out of some company meetings. And so there you go. With a global presence, it makes sense to just have recorded video and audio of these meetings so that they can access it during what would be reasonable business hours for them. Makes all the sense in the world, actually, but totally legitimate question to ask. And so I'm glad that the question was asked, and David had a thoughtful response. And so here's what the SEC had to say. I'm not going to go through much of this document, just the beginning portion so that you can see what the SEC is demanding. And so here is what the SEC attorney wrote to Judge Netburn. Dear Judge Netburn, Plaintiff Securities and Exchange Commission respectfully requests a conference with the court to seek an order compelling defendant Ripple Labs, Inc., to produce relevant video and audio taped recordings of the meetings described in Exhibit A to this letter among current and former Ripple executives and key employees. Now, despite the SEC's request for relevant recordings in its very first document request to Ripple in January 2021, Ripple never informed the SEC that Ripple routinely recorded staff meetings until a key former Ripple employee testified to that in her deposition earlier this month, as described in more detail below. And so upon learning of the recording's existence, the SEC has tried to obtain relevant recordings without the court's involvement, but those efforts have proven unsuccessful, and the parties are now at an impasse. And so there you go, Ripple not wanting to give up stuff. And it hasn't been ordered to at this point, by the way. The SEC, on the flip side, has been ordered twice by the court to turn over specific documents, and they haven't. So a little bit ridiculous, a little bit of hypocrisy going on the part of the SEC, which will surprise absolutely nobody listening to this. But consider this. Like, here's how I'm looking at it. It's like I don't think, like, even if these videos end up in the hands of the SEC, I don't think it's going to matter too much. Like, how damning could comments from any typical Ripple employee be regarding anything they might have said about XRP's security status? How damning could that be? In fact, if anything, couldn't they just pull an SEC tactic out of their rear side and just say, hey, this is not the official, even if it's a high-ranking Ripple employee, actually, couldn't they just say, it's not the official position of Ripple, the company, it's just the official position of this high-ranking Ripple employee, right? Because that's what the SEC does. There is apparently no official position of the SEC on a whole array of things having to do with crypto. Rather, there's just a number of high-ranking SEC officials that have personal opinions, and that's it. But there's no official SEC position. So couldn't Ripple just do the same damn thing? And so how much could all of this matter, even if the videos end up getting in the hands of the SEC? Well, probably not very much. You know, I can't imagine it would be that big of a deal. And then there's this too. Like, I think this is perhaps an even bigger point. You know, like, even if Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson subjectively believed that XRP was a security, like, based on what's been happening recently, does that matter? It seems to me like the answer would be no. And actually, by the way, I'm going to share with you thoughts from Jeremy Hogan on this later in this video. But here's what I was thinking. The court has stated that what matters is whether or not XRP objectively is or was a security, not subjectively. So even if Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson thought they were doing something wrong subjectively, if they objectively weren't because there was market confusion for any number of reasons, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's just objectively what was the status of XRP. What did market participants think about the status of XRP? Because clearly there was market confusion. And so those were my thoughts on this, and I'm going to come back to that exact thought probably towards the later part of the video, because I've got... I have actually the next thing I cover is going to be a quote directly on this from Jeremy Hogan, but the one that I'm thinking of, I believe it's at going to be at the tail end of the video. Yes, that is correct. And so on this, though, on this video production... Jeremy Hogan had the following to say. This is a valid motion, meaning that the SEC motioning, hey, we deserve to see these audio and video files from Ripple. Jeremy Hogan is actually saying that this is valid. It's a valid motion. And then he says the following, though, meaning that this is an issue that needs to be addressed by the court. But I can't understand why we have a barrage of motions like this at the last hour. After a 3-year investigation, the SEC really never had any idea that certain meetings were recorded? That's it, yeah, and so that's a good point. Like, you would think, even if they didn't have an inkling from any sort of Ripple employee or inside source or anything like that, why didn't they ask? Wouldn't that seem like if you're really, you got this 3-year investigation, you're trying to get at the heart of everything, really getting into the nuts and bolts, you never thought to freaking ask if anything was recorded? And you stumbled into it? I mean, if anything, it just highlights more of their ineptitude, but it is what it is, right? You gotta love it. And so then there's this legal topic. This is fresh, hot off the press here. This is from CryptoComes.com. Blow to Ripple as SEC gets access to company's missing Slack messages. And by the way, so Slack, I hadn't heard of Slack until this case. Here's their website right here if you care to take a look at their homepage. But it's basically just a platform that offers enterprise-grade messaging for businesses. So I don't know if they have small business too, but they're naming all these big companies that I'm willing to bet a whole bunch of people have heard of before. And so again, just an internal messaging system. I don't really know a whole lot beyond that. I don't think it really matters for the sake of understanding what's going on in this SEC versus Ripple case. But when we're talking about Slack messages, it's messages from the Slack platform in which Ripple employees are communicating. And so here's how the piece reads. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's request for Ripple employee Slack communications has been granted by the court. Womp womp. Jeremy Hogan thought this was going to happen too. Magistrate Judge Sarah Netburn states that the responsive documents sought by the SEC are relevant to the case. And here's a quote. Any burden to Ripple is outweighed by its previous agreement to produce the relevant Slack messages, the relative resources of the parties, and the amount in controversy. And so that's actually part of the quote right there. I'm going to read the whole thing from beginning to end in just a moment here, since Attorney James Filan actually covered it. But anyway, let me continue with the piece. Ripple will have to produce relevant Slack messages from the 22 custodians identified by the securities watchdog. The SEC claimed that the defendants had refused to produce the remaining Slack data. They failed to collect it due to an error made by Ripple's vendor. The agency was adamant that the missing documents were relevant to the case. And here's another quote. The relatively few Slack documents Ripple has produced so far demonstrate that the missing documents are necessary for the SEC to build a complete and accurate record for summary judgment and trial, end quote. And so in turn, Ripple argued that the SEC's demand was overly burdensome, stating that it would take months to collect messages from all the custodians. And here's another quote. The SEC's extraordinary demand calls for an extensive and costly fishing expedition that would likely take months to complete and come at very significant cost. And then they ended up stating that, this is from Ripple, they estimated that it would cost them $1 million to produce all of the required messages. I have no idea how it could cost that much. I mean, maybe it's I don't know, the amount of homework breaking down things, $1 million to look up these freaking messages. I guess if you're talking about this type of messaging, if it's heavily used and has been for like the better part of a decade or however long, I don't know for sure how long they've been using it. Maybe there's some way just to track or like, I don't know for sure. $1 million seems like a crazy number. But that's what Ripple's saying it would cost. And I would expect it would cost a lot. I don't know that number. I don't know about you guys, but that number just struck me as like, whoa, $1 million for these messages here, and months to compile them, which is rough now because we now know that Ripple's going to have to produce these. So them's the breaks, right? Find a way to do it faster, I guess. Eesh. Glad I'm not having to deal with that myself. And so here's a quote. This is the tweet from James K. Filan, XRP community member, wrote, the court grants the SEC's motion to compel production of Ripple's Slack communications in a text-only order. So when he says text-only there, that just means that there's, rather than, as many times I'm sure you've seen following my channel and others, or just looking up articles, doing your own research, you've probably seen that a lot of times when there are decisions made on motions, there are actual full documents with detailed explanations of why the judge ruled the way that she has. In this case, it's just a short text-only order, which is basically just a few sentences. And it reads as follows. Order granting 283 letter motion. The Slack messages sought are relevant to the parties' claims and defenses and proportional to the needs of the case. Any burden to Ripple is outweighed by its previous agreement to produce the relevant Slack messages, the relative resources of the parties, and the amount in controversy. Accordingly, Ripple is ordered to search and produce responsive documents from the Slack platform and from Slack platform. I butchered that. Slack platform from the 22 custodians identified by the SEC. And so that line in there that you may or may not have caught that said the relative resources of the parties, that was factored in here, meaning that the fact, even if Ripple's right and this costs them $1 million, that's the judge basically saying, okay, yeah, so. So if it's $1 million, it's $1 million. Man. Thankfully, Ripple has quite the war chest to battle the SEC in the way that they have. My gosh, just for the right to freaking exist. It's ridiculous what the SEC has done here. And so then, attorney Jeremy Hogan, who of course runs the YouTube channel Legal Briefs, he retweeted that short thread from James K. Filan and wrote the following. In all caps, he wrote, "Don't like this post," with a little smiley face. That's because he thought that this would not go in favor of Ripple effectively. Here's how he worded it. He wrote, "Sometimes I don't like being correct, but here we are. The judge granted the SEC's motion to compel Ripple's Slack messaging documents. We'll find out in a couple months what those messages show, if anything. And so now we're getting back to circling back to the part where I was talking about how, like, my impression, especially after what's happened recently, especially the most, I guess it was just a couple days ago, the telephonic hearing with the SEC and Ripple. It was made very clear that subjective opinions on matters seem to not matter. Objective stances, that's what matters. That's the meat of this. And so there's an individual here named Andrew who apparently was thinking along the same lines as me. And so he wrote to Jeremy Hogan here, he wrote the following. This bothers me less after hearing about the objective standard yesterday, because now, even if the message showed that they thought they might be violating securities law, that doesn't matter. If the law is unclear, it's less important what they think. Correct? ? And Jeremy Hogan did respond and wrote the following. He wrote, "Yes, you are paying attention." And so I'll pause right there. I will admit I felt a little bit validated too. Because I don't have a legal background. I don't know. It's like, that's just the way it struck me as a layperson. I was like, how the hell, if everything's objective, then who the hell cares what Brad and Chris thought? Even if they thought they were being evil, like their intent was to be evil, if the law says objectively that what they're doing wasn't evil, then it doesn't matter, right? Seriously. Oh, man. Okay, so anyway, so Jeremy Hogan again, he wrote, "Yes, you are paying attention, but I think the SEC in these documents is looking for messages that suggest Ripple was treating XRP like a share of stock, e.g., let's put out this press release now so that the price of XRP will increase," or something like that. And so that's what Jeremy Hogan had to say. And maybe that is what they're looking for, which would be interesting. For a number of reasons, not the least of which is the demonstrable fact that XRP does not follow the activities of Ripple. XRP follows the price action of Bitcoin and the broader crypto market, which is why for most of the last few years, when there's been all of this endless barrage of good news surrounding not just adoption of XRP, but if you just get on the Ripple side, like all of the developments with Ripple, the company, and how they're getting customers to actually use XRP, it's just about 0% of the time would the price move. Very close to 0%. It just didn't. And people are like, what the hell is going on? This doesn't make any sense. And that's when I would always come and explain, like, I understand it's irrational, but it's because people, like, they don't have enough information. There's too many cryptocurrencies out there. It's not clear which coins are going to have long-term viability. People don't know these things. They really don't. Frankly, they weren't by and large counting on Ripple anyway. Not everybody. And so, some of the people that were curious and thought maybe it would make sense for this stuff to kind of correlate here, I was like, well, no, this is an immature market, and here is some data that proves that these cryptocurrencies just move in tandem, not down to the second, the minute, the day, the week, the month, so on and so forth. But if you zoom out with a long enough time horizon, you can see the whole market moves together. It is provably the case. And so even if you find something here that shows that Ripple's trying to impact the price of XRP, well, I don't know what the legal implications are that, because I don't have a legal background, but I can tell you this. Whatever Ripple's plans could have been to that effect, if they had some, they were doomed to fail. Because XRP, it doesn't care what Ripple's doing. XRP just moves with the rest of the market. That's what global speculators have decided to do. That's how they're treating it. And so there it is. But I'll go ahead and wrap up here. I am not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.